Joining me tonight, journalist and former host of Media Watch, Jonathan Holmes. With him is the Executive Director of the Sydney Institute, Gerard Henderson. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you.
Now, the ABC has conceded that an error of judgment was made in allowing Zaki Mallah to join the audience and ask a question of the Minister on Monday night. Gerard Henderson, what's your view?
Well, my view is I agree with Sarah Henderson, the Liberal MP from Victoria, who said that to work out what went on here, you've got to look at the executive producer, not the presenter, Tony Jones, but the executive producer, Peter McAvoy. I mean, he made the decision about that the question be called. He approved the question. I know that that Q&A go out and ask people to come into the studio on certain occasions. I don't know whether this was the case, but they knew that Mallah was coming in. No one checked.
No, he submitted the question.
Yes, but but Tony Jones called the question. Peter McAvoy approved the question, and the question was called.
Yeah.
And it was approved and it was edited. So they knew he was there, but they didn't check him. They knew some things about him, and they didn't tell the Liberal parliamentarian on the panel, nor anyone else what his background was. They didn't say that this man had pleaded guilty to threatening to murder ASIO officers. They didn't say that. The audience should have been told that. No, he said that.
It did sound like Steve Chobo.
It was in the question. It was built into the question.
No, people were not told in advance that this was a man who had threatened to murder ASIO officers and pleaded guilty to this. No one was told in advance. So he gets up and asks the question, then he says what he does. Now, this is a very serious breakdown. Now, the person in control of this is not the board. They meet 11 times a year. It's not the chairman. He spends a lot of time overseas. It's the managing director and so-called editor-in-chief, Mark Scott. He's responsible and the executive producer of the program. It's taken Mark Scott 3 days to say anything of substance, and what he said today is pretty weak.
Jonathan Holmes, if Q&A was going to have someone question the integrity of the government's citizenship laws, is the person to do that someone who's threatened to kill ASIO and DFAT officials and someone who's made disgusting and degrading comments about two female columnists?
Look, the tweet is a separate issue. My understanding, Emma, is that nobody on the Q&A's production team knew about those tweets. They were actually kept very secret, well, not secret, but quiet, for understandable reasons.
Miranda How do you keep a tweet quiet?
Well, I mean, the point is that Miranda Devine and the other Rita, they did not publicise them for very obvious reasons. They didn't want to give it more oxygen. So until it all came out on Tuesday, that tweet was not widely known. But
you should research the people you're going to have on asking questions.
You could say that somebody should have trawled through his tweets for the last 6 months. I mean, I don't know how many Q&A questions they're going to do that, but you could say that they should have done it in this case. And I do think that if they had found those tweets, they wouldn't have asked him on.
Well, they knew he was there. The last time I spoke to Mr McAvoy, he told me that on Q&A they had 60 staff. There's plenty of staff to find.
60 staff?
That's what he told me, yeah. I'm not saying they're all full-time.
That's ridiculous.
Well, that's what he told me, anyway. Well, they're not short of staff, and the idea that someone as controversial... I mean, how many other people have Q&A asked to come into the studio who have a record of pleading guilty of threatening to murder ASIO officers? The answer is zero. Can I just finish? This is the person you check. You don't check everyone in the audience, but you obviously check this person.
But it's the nature of live TV, isn't it, Gerard Henderson, that unpredictable things can happen?
This wasn't unpredictable. This was a gotcha question, which...
No, the question wasn't gotcha. The follow-up...
It was a gotcha question.
was outrageous.
Which Tony Jones called because he was directed to call that question by his executive producer, Peter McAvoy.
Steve Chobo...
This was a gotcha question which the ABC invited.
Let's let Jonathan Holmes
I mean, Steve Chobo coped with the question fine. He is not some wilting flower.
Well, I never said he was.
Well, okay,
but that's not the point.
So you said, you know, no one was warned, all this stuff. He dealt with that in a way that I think many viewers would have thought was extremely effective. Others would have thought it was over the top. Whatever. But I mean, that's what the program's like.
Hold on a minute. Let's let Jonathan
Now, you say, okay, are we saying, as a matter of interest, that nobody who has been imprisoned for an offence a decade ago should come on television?
Well, it depends what the offence is. But
okay,
you see,
so
it was never said that when it's not an offence, I mean, it's not a parking offence. He pleaded guilty to planning to murder ASIO officers. People like Dennis Richardson, who served Australia well.
No, he pleaded guilty to a threat.
To issuing threats.
Okay, he pleaded guilty
and he
to
was
threatening
he was
to
found
murder.
innocent of the terrorist charge because it was basically an entrapment.
Well, you just interrupted me. You're all interrupting me now.
No, Gerard Henderson, it is
just...
worth making the point that while the Prime Minister today did say he was a convicted terrorist, he's not a convicted terrorist.
Well, I'm not responsible for what the Prime Minister said, but
it's important to clear those sorts of factual
well, let's clear this one up.
Misconceptions.
He threatened to murder people like Dennis Richardson. That's what a very long-time servant of Australia in very many public roles. That's what he did. And the ABC invited him into the studio. The ABC called his question, and the ABC did not tell anyone on the panel or in the audience of his crime.
Just further to Jonathan Holmes' question to you, on what criteria should people be denied entry to the Q&A studio and the right to ask a question? For the rest of their lives?
Well, I would think anyone who threatens to commit murder would be a start.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
I would think so. I mean, maybe you would like people who threaten to commit murder in your studio, but other
what do you
don't.
think, Jonathan? In what circumstance should people be denied the right?
Well, what the team did know, they didn't know about the tweet. What they did know, though, is that Zaki had been on television several occasions, live, saying things like completely condemning Islamic State, saying that anyone who joined it was an idiot. That was in October last year on the project. He has been, and his blogs, his video blogs are a constant refrain of attacking Islamic State and saying that people should not join it. Now, okay, he comes from a direction that is still fairly radical, but he's not by any means a supporter of Islamic State. And the last thing they would have expected is that he would sort of say anything in support of Islamic State. And in fact, even though I can see how easily it was misinterpreted, he didn't.
Okay, you're saying that they should have seen his blogs and noticed that he wasn't defending ISIS. Okay. But then, if they checked his blogs, why didn't they check his tweets?
Well,
but he wasn't.
He threatened essentially to publicly rape women.
Gerard Henderson, earlier this year, during the outrage over the terrorist attacks in Paris on Charlie Hebdo, you defended the rights of Charlie Hebdo to mock the Prophet Muhammad in their magazine. You wrote that the Paris murderers took aim at freedom of expression. If you think Charlie Hebdo should have the right to insult Muslims, shouldn't Zaki Mallah also have the right to insult Australians?
Well, I don't think it's a very accurate account of what I said, but I wouldn't go around doing those things myself. But I did defend the right.
You said they had taken aim at freedom of expression.
But there is one thing to publish a cartoon, and there is one thing to threaten to murder ASIO officers.
But he didn't do this live on air.
He didn't do that on air. He has not done. He has been saying for the last 10 years there should be no violence.
We're talking about whether he should be in the studio or not. What they should have done was...
No, I'm going exactly to what happened on Monday.
Does it not matter what he said since?
Okay. When they had another confessed terrorist on the program, David Hicks, who's...
Can I draw you back, because we will run out of time. Can I draw you back to the specific question about Monday night?
I am doing that. Who has made many anti-Semitic statements and who has said that he'd attempted to kill people on the other side of the Kashmir line of control. They had him on a video link. So they knew what he was going to say and they could have cut him off. This guy they had in the studio, that's different.
So if I can draw you back to the question, if you're going to defend the rights of freedom of expression of Charlie Hebdo, should Zaki Mallah also have the right to express his views? And his views, just to be clear, were that many Australian Muslims would have been so upset by Minister Steve Chobo's words that would have perhaps encouraged them to join Islamic State. That's what he said.
Would I defend his right to be live in the studio? No. And would I defend his...
But what did he say?
Can I just finish? Would I defend his right to threaten essentially to rape women? No, I wouldn't.
But he didn't say that on Monday night.
He didn't do that on air.
It doesn't matter what he did on air. They invited him in the studio.
I think it does, because that's what we're talking about. I think we should stick to relevant facts.
They invited him in the studio
to say a word
after he did that.
Jonathan Holmes.
Yes, they did. And I think that was a mistake. And obviously somebody should have checked the tweets. It's easy to say that, but I mean, they did not know about the tweet. But he said nothing of that kind on air. What he said on air was nothing that everyone should be getting completely hysterical about. Are we so fragile now, Gerard, that we simply cannot take a little bit of somebody saying something that's slightly unorthodox?
What he said on air was that young Muslim Sunnis should go to...
No, he did not say that.
He did not say that.
He said that Muslims should go...
No, he did not say that.
He said they should go...
He said in his view... He said in his view...
He did not say that.
Let me tell you exactly what he said. He said in his view, many Australian Muslims would have been so upset by Minister Steve Chobo's words that would encourage them to join Islamic State, which is a leap to say that he told them to go and do it.
No,
well, joining Islamic State means
deeply disapproves of Islamic State.
Joining Islamic State, which he said, well, you know, they should go and do this. Essentially.
He did not say they should go and do this, and it's very important. I'm not covering for him, Gerard Henderson, but we should stick to facts.
Well, I'll stick to facts. Joining Islamic State means going to Syria as a Sunni Muslim to murder Shia Muslims.
We know what it means, but he didn't call people to do that.
Well, he said, you can understand they would do it.
Yes,
okay.
He did. And what we are trying to do, what we're all trying to do, is to find the best way of stopping young men.
I want to move it to something else now. Yesterday, 4 News Corp tabloids had this story on their front pages, complete with photoshopped images of ABC flags being waved by what are made to look like Islamic State fighters. How does that further debate about views that should or should not be aired?
Well, I don't know. It's tabloid media. I wouldn't do it myself, but I thought it was fun, but I wouldn't do it.
You thought it was fun?
Well, I think...
Fun.
Jonathan
Green. As an ABC employee, I didn't think it was
fun. Jonathan Green on ABC television this morning thought it was fun.
An ABC flag waved to look like an Islamic State flag.
I don't put together News Corp tabloids. That's what tabloids do, but I don't really think that's the essential point. But I didn't do it.
The foremost read newspapers in the country depicting the ABC as Islamic State sympathisers?
Well, what the ABC did in relation to this matter was very ill-advised, and they are entitled to be criticised, and some people criticise them this way and some people criticise them that way. I must say, for all the criticism that ABC personalities direct towards others, they are very, very sensitive to any kind of criticism of themselves, and that includes... The problem with this organisation is there's not one Conservative in the place in any prominent program. So as the former director of... As the former director of BBC said recently, only this week, that what develops in the BBC is the same in the ABC, it's a groupthink. Everyone thinks essentially the same.
Let's let Jonathan Holmes have a say.
When Muller comes in, no one in the organisation says this is not a bad idea.
We are running out of time.
They all think the same.
Jonathan Holmes, what did you think of the way the News Corp tabloids have handled this?
What upset me, Emma, was that they all portrayed this man as a fanatical Islamic State supporter. They didn't have to... I mean, you talk about Lateline not doing any research. You only have to look at one of his tweets or one of his appearances to know that he has been consistently opposing Islamic State for years and telling young people not to join Islamic State. That's where he's coming from. It doesn't take a lot of research to find that out, Gerard, but none of them did it because it didn't suit their yarn.
Yes.
Right? I need a very quick final word. Some weeks ago, the ABC chairman coincidentally made the decision to launch an independent review into the Q&A program. Do we also now need this snap government inquiry as well?
Well, it won't do any harm, it won't do any good. I mean, the government doesn't run the ABC, no one runs the ABC, and essentially the government doesn't run the ABC. If anyone runs it, it's the managing director, and he doesn't do much of a job. The ABC essentially runs itself.
We are running out of time.
An inquiry won't make any difference.
Jonathan Holmes.
I mean, can you imagine if they called an inquiry into... well, all right, it's owned by the public, fair enough, but the government should not be holding inquiries into the ABC. I just don't think that's right. I don't think it respects the independence of the ABC.
Well, it won't make any difference.
By all means, have an independent, somebody else do it, but not the government.
Okay, gentlemen, we are out of time. Jonathan Holmes, Gerard Henderson, thank you.
It's an absolute pleasure.